Today we're going to compare living in Vietnam, Southeast Asia versus living in Paraguay, South America. We're here to address the truth. If you're looking for factual and unbiased information on Paraguay and Vietnam, then keep watching this video. I've personally lived in both countries and that makes me qualified to comment on these issues. Let's get started with a very important topic, which is the median age in both countries. At the time of shooting this video, Vietnam has a median age of 32.5 years, which makes it one of the youngest countries in the world. Yes, I know that the median age is actually lower than 32.5 years, but if we compare Vietnam with a Western country, we can see that in Western countries the median age ranges anywhere from 40 to 55 years, which is definitely much higher than in Vietnam. Now you might think, why is the median age important to me? Well, there are a bunch of reasons why the median age is very important. If you're looking to build a business, if you're looking to employ people, you want to be in an environment where the median age is lower. Why? It's easier to find young and skilled labor than if you were to move your business to Monaco, the country with the highest median age in the entire world. With that being said, median age is important. It's not just important for hiring, it's also important. Let's say you want to find love. Your chances of finding love in a country with a lower median age are just that much greater than if you were to do the same thing in a country with a higher median age, assuming that you're looking for a younger girlfriend or wife. What about the median age in Paraguay? At the time of shooting this video, the median age in Paraguay is sitting at 26.2 years. That means out of two people, one is younger than 26.2 years and one is older than 26.2 years, making Paraguay a very attractive country for hiring as well as dating, finding love. I want to touch on a few more points here before we move on to the next topic. It is really important for you to consider what skill sets you're looking for because, again, each country has different strengths, each country has different languages, and because of that, it's really important for you to consider the full picture. More people speak English in Vietnam than they do in Paraguay. However, that doesn't mean that the majority of people that you see in Vietnam speak perfect English. No, that's not what I mean. But the English is just more available, it's more accessible in Vietnam than it is in Paraguay. Paraguay is sitting in the heart of South America, surrounded by Spanish-speaking countries. Yes, and of course, Brazil, a Portuguese-speaking country. What also falls into the equation here is that Vietnam is a much more industrial country than Paraguay. If you want some factual and unbiased information on dating in both countries, then keep watching this video. Let's talk about another really important thing here, which we actually just started to talk about, which is language. Language is really important. So many expats and nomads are wondering, does it make sense for me to move to a country like Vietnam, where the local language is definitely much more difficult to learn than in a country like Paraguay? What you have to consider is, of course, your professional career path. Are you looking to establish yourself in Vietnam? If the answer to this question is a yes, then you will most likely have to learn Vietnamese. No matter where you decide to relocate to, no matter where you decide to settle down in, you probably have to learn the local language at some point. Why is that important? Well, you want to know what's going on in the country. You want to be able to understand the processes in the country and not having to rely on a legal person for every little thing, for every little step, so that you at least know what's going on and so that you can at least measure and kind of observe what the next steps could be. Let's say we're talking about a law changing in the country. For you just being able to read the news. News is being publicized in Vietnamese, in English, and also in Chinese. So you definitely have more languages to choose from. However, no matter where you decide to settle down, it is super important that you eventually make the effort to learn the local language. And Vietnam is no exception. However, for a foreigner, for a nomad wanting to get started in Southeast Asia, Vietnam is definitely a good place for the simple reason that a good chunk of the younger generations in Vietnam speak English, right? They go to English schools, they watch English movies, they have interest in moving to North America, Australia, New Zealand, Europe, and that's just why English is widely spoken in Vietnam these days. Paraguay is a Spanish-speaking country. Well, technically, Paraguay is home to two languages, Spanish and Guarani. Guarani is the local language, and even many people in Paraguay, they do not speak Guarani, okay? Even though it is the official language of Paraguay, many Paraguayans, they don't speak Guarani or just speak a little bit, right? But they're not perfect at it. You can kind of compare it to living in Texas, where there are a lot of people people speaking English and Spanish. Many Texans are sons and daughters of immigrants that migrated from Mexico or other Latin countries. And so the language, in some instances, it got passed on to the first generation of Americans. In many instances, it didn't. Or for example, Quebec, Canada is another example. I'm working with a guy from Montreal, Quebec, and Quebec is definitely a French-speaking territory, a French-speaking state in the country of Canada. Yet, not every Quebecan speaks French fluently. It's taught in school, but in order to start a business, you have to speak French. Anyway, coming back to Paraguay, we don't want to get sidetracked here. What I want to say is that Spanish is the official language as much as Guarani is the official language, but anything you want to get done here is going to happen in Spanish. Like in Vietnam, if you want to get something done, anything legally, it's going to happen in Vietnamese. The good thing is that you can find many English-speaking legal representatives like us who can help you with legal procedures in case you don't want to get started learning Spanish right away. All right, let's talk about the next point, which is really, really, really important, and that is the foreigner acceptance level. That's what I call it, the FAL, foreigner acceptance level. What the foreigner acceptance level says is how welcome a foreigner is in a specific country. Now we're talking about Paraguay and Vietnam. Let's get started talking about Vietnam. I'd say foreigners are very welcome on a local level. Like when you visit Vietnam, you probably have experienced some really friendly locals in the country. Like people are very curious to learn more about you. There is this curiosity embedded in the locals, and that's really great. You kind of feel liked, you feel appreciated, and you feel welcome. This is really important. If you want to visit a country as a nomad, as an expat, you want to come to a country like Vietnam, and you ask yourself, am I even welcome in this country? Like I said, the locals, they do like foreigners a lot. They regard foreigners as successful, and when they see, for instance, a person from the West, they typically think that that person got a lot of money, that person is educated, and that is a good person. That's what a lot of local people would think. Not everyone, of course, but many people think that. So traveling in Southeast Asia is actually a good experience in many cases. Not all countries, but many countries. Now, let's talk about Paraguay. Paraguay is pretty much the same. You come here as a tourist, you come here as a nomad, as an expat, and you immediately see how welcome you are in this country. Like people are extremely hospitable, people are very kind, and they do a lot of things without expecting anything in return. So there's a lot of giving going on without taking. People are generally and naturally nice people in this country. And I can definitely say the same thing about Vietnam as well. And in Paraguay, you feel very welcome, which is important. You want to go to a country where you feel welcome. This is important. All right, let's talk about institutions and governments, something that's really important too. On a governmental level, foreigners are not welcome in Vietnam. How do I know that? How can I prove that? Well, take a look at the immigration policies. You have no path to citizenship. You cannot own land in the country. Owning companies is extremely restricted. You can only own certain types of companies. If you want to start companies where you're competing with locals, then you have to find a local partner to open up that company. So there are many restrictions in place that don't allow a foreigner to operate freely in Vietnam, which is a big turnoff to people, especially entrepreneurs and investors or high net worth nomads. They want to settle down, they want to build a life, they want to start a business, they want to advance their careers, they want to build another leg in their business. It's hard for them because the laws are not constructed in a way to give the foreigner equal rights. And this is tricky. So if you want to settle down, if you want to establish yourself in a country like Vietnam, it might be rather hard for you to do this in the long term, not because the locals don't want you, but because institutions and governments have regulated so many sectors, making it in many instances close to impossible for a foreigner to own 100% of a company and start a business in the country. And this is tough. Like if you're coming to a new country and you want to build in that country, yet you don't have the right to fully own a company without a local partner, it gets very tricky and difficult very quickly. How does that look in Paraguay? On a governmental and institutional level, foreigners are welcome in Paraguay. And the best news that I have for you in this video is that a foreigner can own land, commercial land, private land. You can own the land that your house is built on. You can own 100% of a local company. You get residency and a path to citizenship. And this is crucial. This is gold. And you get this in Paraguay, whereas in Vietnam, many of these things are not possible. Okay, in Vietnam, you cannot own land, you cannot own all companies, all types of companies. You cannot become a citizen, can only become a citizen of Vietnam under a very limited number of situations and circumstances. Okay, there it's limited. In Paraguay, you can become a citizen. Okay, the path to citizenship, whether you are an immigrant from the United States or Ukraine or Australia or I don't know, Argentina, like the path for an immigrant in Paraguay is exactly the same no matter where that person is from. You seek establishment overseas, Paraguay is a great place for that. Unfortunately, that is not the case in Vietnam, where the government and institutions say, we don't want foreigners to compete with us in our own country. Make sure you stay until the end of the video because I'm going to tell you how to succeed in Paraguay's and Vietnam's dating scene. Let's talk about the nightlife, something very important, okay? A lot of people, probably younger people here in their 20s, in their late teens, in their 30s, maybe even people in their 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, who knows? You're watching this video and you're like, what does the nightlife look like in both countries? Very important point. I'm going to say here, Paraguay got nightlife, you know, there are rooftop bars, there are some clubs, but it is not to the same magnitude as what you get to experience in Southeast Asia, particularly in Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam. Comparing the two cities, Ho Chi Minh City is like 10 to 15 times the size of Asuncion, Paraguay. Now, I'm not counting nearby cities, okay, in Asuncion. I'm not counting the surrounding cities. So I'm talking about Asuncion, not San Lorenzo, not Luque. I'm just talking now about Asuncion, okay? But the whole metro of Asuncion, which includes the nearby cities, give it like a 2 million population. In Ho Chi Minh City, there live approximately 11 million people, but the real number is probably much higher than that, much higher. So just comparing Asuncion with Ho Chi Minh City, we're talking about a big difference, right? So it's a much larger city. But in Ho Chi Minh City, you got a lot of like underground clubs, you got a lot of rooftop bars, clubs, you have so much entertainment, and of course the size of the city is all the difference. It's all the difference. So if you want a more vibrant nightlife, if you're into this type of entertainment, if you don't want a quiet life, if you want to live like a young single person, or you want to have the access to that, then Ho Chi Minh City is definitely the better choice. Like the bigger nightclubs, you know, like the crazy stuff, it exists here in Paraguay, but it's not as big as it is in Ho Chi Minh City. In Ho Chi Minh City, you've got a lot more options. But yeah, you also got rooftop bars in Asuncion, Paraguay. You've got bars, you've got clubs, but everything is smaller here. Let's talk about services. A very important topic. Like so many people are moving to developing countries because they want to get more bang for the buck, right? You want to improve your living costs. You want to lower your living costs. And guess what? If you're moving to Vietnam and Paraguay, you can achieve exactly that. One thing I want to point out here is that services that appear very insignificant, that are almost unnoticeable. For instance, a very simple thing such as going out to play billiard at a pool hall, okay? You're going to play pool at a pool hall, and something very trivial like having a service person wreck the pool table for free, because labor is cheaper in these countries, and you do have that in Vietnam. So if you go to a pool hall in Vietnam, there are mostly women working there, women that are serving men, okay? And if you're at the pool table there and you're like, we just finished one game, let's play the next one, what very typically happens is that a young lady will appear and wreck the pool table for you. You do not have to do that. Imagine that in America. Imagine that in Spain. Imagine that in Australia. That kind of service doesn't exist. In Vietnam, that is for free. And the good news is that this is also doable, accessible, available here in Paraguay. Like in Paraguay, this also happens. You go to a pool hall and oftentimes the pool table is being wrecked for you. You don't have to do that, which is great. Then let's talk about spas. Massages, a very important point. So many expats and nomads, they're coming to Southeast Asia as well as South America because they want to enjoy, you know, a good massage without spending a whole lot of money. So what you can do here is you can really find reasonably priced massages. I'm not talking about Paraguay. You can find massages for as little as $15 to $20 an hour, which is a very reasonable price considering the amount of energy and effort it takes to actually give a massage. Like a massage is like one of the most underrated services ever, and one of the most underrated services in the 21st century, because if you've ever given a massage for an hour, you know the amount of energy, effort it takes takes to actually do it, because you absorb all the energy and tension from the person who you're giving the massage to. This is not an easy job. So for you to be able to get this for a very reasonable price, now you might say, well, it's a reasonable price for us foreigners because we do earn our money in US dollars, in Canadian dollars, in Australian dollars, in euros. For us, it's cheap. For local people, it's none. I totally get it, and that is 100% spot on. Likewise, in Vietnam, you can get a massage for 15 to 20 bucks an hour, and sometimes maybe even a little bit less, but you might also pay more, right? This is like the entry price. You can pay as much as $100 an hour too if you go to like a 5-star hotel. And the same also in Paraguay. You can pay 15 to $20 an hour, but you can also pay a lot more than that. You can pay double too, easily. From a purchasing power perspective, both countries offer amazing value to expats and nomads in the 21st century. Let's talk about one of our most favorite subjects of all, the dating scene in Paraguay and Vietnam. Let's start out with the median height in both countries. The median height in Vietnam, and this is at the time of shooting this video, it's 154 centimeters, which happens to be roughly 5'1", a little bit less than 5'1". In Paraguay, the median height for females happens to be 158 centimeters, which is roughly 5'2". If you're running away from the crazy feminization in the Western countries, then guess what? You're gonna find what you're looking for in both countries, Vietnam and Paraguay. What are the characteristics of the average Vietnamese lady that you see walking down the streets of Ho Chi Minh City or Hanoi? Many Western expats that dated local women in Vietnam, they said, you know what? These women, the Vietnamese women, are incredibly hard working. They're great caregivers, they're loyal, they're very hard working. Many people say that Vietnam is home to the most beautiful women across whole Southeast Asia. And based on my personal experience, I can definitely attest to this. Vietnamese women, they're slim, they're feminine, they got long hair. Of course, not all of them, but a good chunk of them, and they're very beautiful. And what they also love is foreigners, which gives you an edge in this dating scene. How do we look in Paraguay? Okay, it's a different country, it's a different culture. In Paraguay, women are incredibly caring, loving, they're incredibly devoted. And you can see that as soon as you start making friends with some of the women here. They're gonna care for you as if you were the best friend. Paraguay is an extroverted culture. It is not confrontational like it is in the West, and I've said this many times throughout our videos on the Nomad Elite channel, but it is still an extroverted culture where you are expected to communicate issues to the person who you're with, whether she is a female friend of yours or whether she is your girlfriend. You are expected to communicate everything and anything to that girl. Now, does that also hold true in Vietnam? Yes, it does, but Vietnam is home to a different culture. It is an introverted culture, and it is also not confrontational. So it's different. Well, but naturally, guess what? Women still do want you to communicate your issues, their issues. I'm just saying that this country, Paraguay, is a more extroverted culture than Vietnam. Those who have visited both countries know exactly what I'm talking about. Alright, since you've made it this far into the video, you must be very serious about visiting or moving to either Paraguay or Vietnam. Fantastic. Because now I'm going to tell you about the tourist visa situation in both countries. Now, if you want to visit Paraguay, you get a 90-day tourist visa, assuming that you are from one of the Western countries that have a treaty with Paraguay. So we're talking about the European Union, North America, okay? Latin America, most of Latin America enjoys visa-free access to Paraguay. If you're from Australia, New Zealand, Taiwan, the UAE, Japan, and I think also South Korea, then you can visit Paraguay without a visa. If you happen to be from a country that does not enjoy visa-free access into Paraguay, then you have to apply for a visa prior to visiting the country, or you will not be allowed to board the plane. How do we look in Vietnam? There have been a lot of changes in Vietnam's tourist visa system over the past number of years. Starting from 2020, there have been a lot of changes. Now they're again allowing Western expats, people from Western countries with a Western passport, okay, from the EU, from the United States, Canada. You are allowed to go there and stay for up to 90 days. They have changed this system multiple times over the past couple of years, and now they kind of reverted back. Let's talk about residency. residency. Another important point. Okay, now we're talking to the guys who are serious about establishing themselves in a foreign country. If that's you, fantastic, keep watching this video. What I want to say here is that the residency situation in Vietnam is not ideal. Yes, you can become a resident, but there's only temporary residency available to foreigners at this moment in time. There might be some exceptions, you know, for large industrial investors, for large economic contributors. The average guy, though, the average Joe like you and me, will not get permanent residency in Vietnam so easily. Several of my friends who are married to Vietnamese women and who are living in Vietnam, they cannot get permanent residency. They have to renew their visa every 2 to 3 years. The same also holds true if you happen to open up a company in Vietnam. It's usually a 2-year renewable temporary residence permit, assuming that nothing changed in the constitution. If anything changed, if the requirements changed, you may not be able to renew your visa in Vietnam. And we're talking about residency right here. How does that look in Paraguay? If you want to come to Paraguay, if you are a foreigner, you want to come to Paraguay, you can apply for temporary residency, which is valid for 2 years initially. Before the 2 years are up, you can convert to permanent residency, which gives you the opportunity to live in the country for the long term and even apply for citizenship. Paraguay is a very liberal country. It is a very open-minded country, and it is a country that has been welcoming immigrants for centuries. If you're ready to relocate to Paraguay, then please feel free to reach out to us. Nomad Elite is a full package relocation agency that specializes in Latin America and Europe. If you need our help, if you want to work with us, with the #1 agency in Paraguay, then please feel free to reach out to us. Now, last but not least, who is Vietnam for? Okay, let's answer this question here really quick. Now that you have seen, that you have watched me talk about so many different subjects, I mean, we have hit so many points in this video. We have really unturned so many stones. Who should be living in Vietnam? Well, I think a person that loves living the Oriental lifestyle, that loves living the Southeast Asia routine, a person who does not want to commit serious money to the region should consider moving to Vietnam. A person who is not into citizenship, into second passports, a person who is not into permanent residency, a person who does not want to purchase land, house in Asia, and now specifically in Vietnam. I think like for a person like this, Vietnam does make sense. Vietnam is a great place for a perpetual traveler, but it is not a great place for an investor. Who is Paraguay for? Paraguay is for people who want to settle down in this country, for people who want to establish themselves overseas. Paraguay is for people who value residency with a path to citizenship. Paraguay is for people who value civil rights. Paraguay is for people who value company ownership, full foreign company ownership. And Paraguay is also for people who value the Second Amendment. Which of the discussed countries are you looking to relocate to? Share your thoughts in the comments below. As always, we appreciate you. Thank you so much for watching, and we see you on the next video.